In this episode of Dorks, we're talking homebrew, and we don't mean beer. We mean brewing up solutions to the problems that all of us face, and we've invited two brewmasters, Kevin Allen of Comfort Systems and Jeff Elwell of E.M.Duggan, to talk about the solutions that they brewed up in their business and the ones that they have found to be most effective. It was an excellent conversation, so grab a cold one and let's talk homebrew.
And we're live, episode 75 and a third, The Joy of Homebrewing, with Kevin Allen and Jeff Elwell. Well, we might get around to why that's a 75 and a third, but that might be an inside joke for a little while. It is really interesting. I feel like I've seen you guys before, but it's great to sit down and have a conversation and have a little bit of fun. We're going to talk about building your own software versus buying it off the shelf. Do you buy your beer? Do you brew your beer? It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a little early for me, and it's been a little bit of a long day, so I'm just having me a Selt water. It's actually seltzer, but whoever built this can didn't really believe in changing the font. So I love that because, well, you know, sometimes it makes it cheaper. Travis, I love this background. I feel like you might get up and play piano and start a fire and get out a pipe or a stogie and just enjoy yourself. That's what that looks like to me, man.
You don't want the piano, but there could be a fire. Why not? It's just the fun background we have here. Tonight I am drinking Element water. The raspberry salt tonight. I have to stay sober. I've got to go to a junior high girls basketball game, and they really don't like it when you show up to those.
Seems like bag, so
the cheering might get better.
I'm admittedly one of those parents. I'm very loud. I'm not obnoxious. I hope my wife might say differently, but I'm very loud. I get really into the game, so it's probably best if I just stick with the water. What about you, Jonathan?
I actually found a homebrew. So I had somebody up at the co-work space. I mentioned that we were doing a homebrew episode, and we were doing a homebrew episode, and they brought me in a nutty brown ale that's made out of Erie. Distributed through Voodoo Brewing, but he's like, I don't actually have, this isn't one of my line of products. So the Voodoo Brewing people are out of Erie, if you've ever had a Voodoo beer. And one of the guys that, you know, is one of the works up at the co-work space I work at. So I got one off him. It's pretty good. I think it's probably a little more high octane than other nutty brown ales because they tend to go that route. But I've had a long week, but a good day. So I'm grabbing a decent one. How about you, Jeff? What are you drinking today?
I ran out of beers, but I have a Jefferson Ocean, bourbon whiskey aged on the ocean, which is reflected in the price point.
The idea is right that it sloshes around in the barrel a lot more and evaporates differently. Isn't that the deal with those? Does it make a difference?
I don't know. It's very smooth. It is. It's a nice bourbon. But I don't know that I can, you know, is that the cause of it, or is it just that they made a nice bourbon? I'm not sure.
Right on. Kevin, you're sitting in a hotel room, man, but were you able to find a drink?
I'm like Jeff and Travis here. I've just got some soda off the shelf here, nothing fancy. I'll be driving to dinner here in a little while after I get out of the room, after we get done with this. So apologize for maybe the video not being as good as quality as it could be, but this is what you get whenever you use a laptop out of the box and don't have any additional cameras like the rest of this crew has here on the cast today.
The audio is pretty good though, man, for an out of the box. Right on.
Yep.
So yeah, they're really kicking it with the out of the box mic on this one. Usually they're pretty bad, but Kevin, do us a favor and introduce yourself. I know we've had Jeff on before, but give us a little bit of who you are and what you're up to, and then we'll start rolling this thing.
Yeah. So first off, glad to be here. Thanks for the invite, guys. Looking forward to this chat. Kevin Allen, as of January 1, got a new title, VP of BIM and Productivity here at Comfort Systems USA. So my role doesn't change much. We're still doing the same things, uh, making sure that we as a company have the best tools and the best things available for our operating companies. I've been here 10 years as of 2013, so May, and looking forward to probably another 10 more at this point.
Awesome.
So I kind of, Jeff, I kind of wanted to mention why we had this episode, like what happened. So I was talking to Jeff and Kevin, and we were talking sort of about how often at this point, when you're buying software, you're not buying software so much as you're buying a piece of what you want, and then the rest of it you're going to have to build out your own. And it reminded me of like back, I don't know, like 20 years ago, when you could not get homebrew beer. You could get Budweiser, Bud Light, you could get Yingling, you could get all of these lagers that were sort of off the shelf. They're as basically the people producing them said, we want the most number of people to like our beer. So we're going to take out anything that's really individual or anything that's really, an outside flavor. And for people like me that didn't have a lot of money, that meant you were homebrewing, because to buy like a good beer that's built around this flavor pattern that you want isn't going to happen. So I felt like that's the same thing that's going on in software. We're buying these out of the box solutions. And when you do that, the problem is it's not really addressing the problems and the work that you want to do in your business. It's meant to sort of address industry-wide issues, but that makes it very tough to implement when you have strong process. And both of you kind of just went off immediately on kind of how that has been your life for forever. So Kevin, I think we should start with you, because you're kind of in the behemoth seat of having this huge company with just lots of different areas. And you would think that some of these bigger pieces of software would be right for that, but even you are struggling and have to build your own stuff.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're going to hit probably 5 billion this year, maybe a little more as an organization. Okay. And so when you look at the diversity of our companies and we range from, a 10, $15 million a year mechanical contractor to a 3 or 4 or $500 million a year mechanical contractor. Okay. And we just have a really range, of the spectrum. So when you talk about that diversity and how difficult it could be sometimes to find a product that fits all of those needs, it doesn't exist, right? It's hard to find one for a single contractor that's making 70 or 100 or $200 million a year, much less find one that fits the 15, 20 to the 500. Okay. And so, yes, in our case, we started on this endeavor. I mean, probably within the first 3 months I showed up here at Comfort Systems, and we've been on it ever since. We started in the AutoCAD world with list routines and scripting for the CAM side. For those of you who are running that product, you know that nothing downloads to a sheet metal table without some additional effort. With scripting and lots of things to change, not units, but just settings within each one of the fittings. And so we took that on first, and then it has grown into having a couple of developers here on staff here at Comfort. One of them, I'd say, very seasoned. The other one is, coming up and doing a lot of great things. But it really fits our needs here at Comfort Systems to have that, flexibility on staff to make these changes on the fly, really.
How big's your development staff right now?
So we have 2 guys, okay? Believe it or not, we have 2 guys who are writing all of our Revit add-ins, okay? We have, I think its last count was like 125 buttons in Revit, doing a lot of the same things that some of your off the shelf things do: spooling, assemblies, packages, sheet management, on and on. You could list some of the things that a lot of the outside add-ins do. But then we also have a dev team overseas in Australia as well that writes some code for us there too. So it's a combination of having guys internal within Comfort, but also hiring some external resources.
Right on. Hey, and Mr. Jeff, coming in representing the smaller contractor.
Usually the only room that I'm the smaller contractor, and I like it.
Yeah, like this has got to be a change. You have to be in a relatively different room to be the smaller contractor. But
yeah.
When I first met you, you said that basically you were unhappy with like 90% of the stuff on the market. How have you kind of come into the idea that it's going to have to be a homebrewed solution?
So I guess, starting at the beginning, it's not, I guess it's not, I'm very candid with my comments a lot of the time, and it's probably a little more than I actually feel sometimes, but so like, it's a necessary evil. But a lot of the times, like, especially, 6-8 years ago, like when we were even more in the wild west of construction technology, like, a lot of the solutions don't really fit, but you need bits and pieces of them. And so like my start at, customization, which I'm sure a lot of the people my age's start was Dynamo. And so, back in the early days of Revit, when they first rolled out Dynamo, you started messing around with that stuff. And next thing you know, you were teaching yourself C# and then moving on to like, I wonder how I could build an app. And then, so I originally started E.M.Duggan almost 10 years ago to train Revit and get them in Revit. And just like everyone else at the time, it was tough to do, mechanical in Revit. It was a little easier to do the engineering side, but once you got into the real detailed stuff, it was difficult, and you absolutely couldn't do it without, making your own add-ins. And the other thing about that is that everyone else had just kind of started marketing that stuff too. So everything was a black box. It was all buggy. And, getting it to the point where you could use it was a task in itself. So instead of spending the time trying to get software to work, spending the time, making the software ourselves, or I guess the add-ins at the time, was the big motivator to keep doing that. And once you have the proof of concept of, okay, well, I can do it in Revit, like where else can I do it? And now I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, because now we're expected to either take a product and buy other products to make that product work for us, or to make our own products to make that product work for us.
Yes.
And at some point, you get cocky and confident enough that it's like, okay, well, if I can make, 50% of the product that I'm using, then why can't I make 100? And that doesn't go for everything, Jeff Sample. It just goes for certain things that fit the bill. But for the most part, like a lot of it is like, I'm happy to purchase a big solution that works and does a lot of the work I needed to do. The point solutions at this point in time are what, you eliminate with a lot of this work. And then it grows to where you have a suite, and then it grows to where you have a software. And I think that's the snowball of it all.
I'm guessing you're not talking about point solution as in a data export point solution for a robotic total station. You're talking about, right? I want to clarify what you're talking about there, right? You're not talking about.
Well, I'm making that too, Kevin.
Yeah.
I am too.
Yeah,
what I'm saying though is, you're not referencing just all we build is a point
Oh,
solution to get
points.
data
No,
out to
no,
a
no,
robotic
no.
total station.
No,
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
like you have your staple solutions softwares that you're using to accomplish something. Like I'm a firm believer in whether you make it yourself or someone else makes it, like every pillar at your company should have their own tool, like their dedicated thing, and it should talk to everything else. But you're not going to use, you're not going to use masonry's tools to install pipe. You're not going to use, pipe install tools to do drywall. Like it's
Yes.
it's all kind of so. But then once you have that solution, and then like you start talking about like, okay, well, now we need to connect those solutions. But yeah, no, I'm talking about like the other things that you're doing for maybe a single task or two tasks or three. That's where like I don't think it's right for everyone to build their own software, but I do think it's right for everyone to build their own point solutions to solve problems at their company. Might not be feasible for you to start throwing together an entire, software, but it is feasible for you to, get your feet wet doing some add-ins or, some RPM or some.
Dynamo's a great starter.
Well, that's
package,
a good starting
right?
point. Yep.
Yes. Yes. You can
And then
automate
once
a
you
lot
get
of
really-
things with Dynamo.
Yeah, and then once you get really fed up with Dynamo, then you move on to the next step.
100%. It's crazy how fast a compiled software, doing it in C# Visual Studio and actually compiling code, how fast it runs compared to Dynamo processing and iterating over objects in a model. It is insane. Okay. And if you've never experienced that, somebody out there, get somebody to write you the exact same add-in that does the same thing Dynamo does, compiled, and look at the difference and what it takes. It's unbelievable.
Copy and paste from the building coder. That's the second
Yes.
step after Dynamo is the building
There you go.
coder.
There you go. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, in the building
Jeremy.
coder will give you exact steps, man. He is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, hey, Kevin, I had an interesting question for you, just really quick before we move forward. And you were involved in fabrication back when it first kicked out in Autodesk, and I mean fabrication, the software, when it was still called TSI or MAP software.
Map software. Yes.
It did something that I'm seeing start to happen that's like concerning to me. About halfway through its life cycle, it went from something that was really dynamic that we could hack easily to something that was locked down and made it harder for us to build our own little add-ons and our own little extras in, different things with locking connectors and locking the ends. Do you, both of you, actually, I think it's a question for both of you. Do you see the software suppliers looking at what's being done by the homebrewers and saying, how do we stop this? Or are they generally like, no, go for it, build your point solutions?
I'm not seeing any pushback on my side at all. As a matter of fact, when I talk to some of them, they're questioning, what are we building? And if you need it, somebody else needs it. So are we going to go out and try to market the same thing you're already building? Right. So I'm not seeing any kind of pushback on that at all. And, we work with, other suppliers, for instance, Ferguson, we've got some things we're working with those guys on, partnering with them, doing some dev work, sinks, with the list can go on as to, some of the people that we work with, and Trimble, there's a lot of them out there that are, I would say, surprised that we have a dev team on staff. And when you go to them asking for an SDK, they're like, wait, you're a mechanical contractor. What are you going to do with an SDK? So, then you explain and they understand. And it's like, oh, okay. Now we know why you need an SDK. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
How much of your time is, so you were hitting there on talking to all these different vendors, and earlier we were talking mostly, it sounded like a lot of Revit plugins and kind of task-based solutions, but how much time do you spend focusing on like the task-based solutions, and how much time are you spending kind of Frankensteining all of these systems together, and how do you decide what gets priority?
Oh boy, that's a great question. So for us, priority comes down to what our operating companies are in need of the most. Okay, what's the most pain that they're having? Okay, and we want to solve that problem. Okay, whatever that pain point is. If it's because they have to do 15 clicks to get a process done, and we can write some code and do it in 2 or 3, you bet we're going to write that code. Okay. But simultaneously as a team, so there's 6 of us on the team, myself and 6 others. There's actually 7 now. We're looking at the bigger picture all the time. Okay. Let's not just solve a one-off solution here. Although that may be a quick solution for today, we're also looking at this longer term saying, wait a minute, 5 or 6 or 8 different operating companies are asking to do a certain task. We're looking at this and saying, wait a minute, this all involves around data. Let's back up just a minute and let's put a better plan together to handle and manage data, the extraction of data, whatever it may be, instead of doing that one-off point solution. Although that solves the problem for that one, there's a bigger card to play here, in that we can look at this and from a corporate level, really, and solve this problem a whole nother way. And in turn, we've solved a problem for 6 or 8 or 15 operating companies that they didn't even know was a problem. But when you show them the new tool and the functionality of the new tool, they're like, oh my God, this is awesome. How did you guys come up with this? Well, it all started with an individual request from an operating company, and we're looking at it saying, wait a minute, there's a bigger task here. There needs to be a bigger solution to this single request than just write a little bit of code and they pick and click and we're done, right? Sure. So that becomes challenging, okay? Because although you want to solve the problem for the operating company, 15, 20 detailers, whatever it is, they've got a problem. You want to solve that for them quickly, but you also want to solve it in a bigger picture solution so that it's a more scalable solution, right? It's not just a one and done type situation. That's a difficult thing for me and the team in the position we're in, just because of that diversity I was talking about earlier. All the different companies, the different sizes, some of them only have one detailer. Okay. Others got 30, 40, it's like, oh my gosh. Okay. We can't just listen to the company who has 30 or 40. We also got to listen to the little guy, because there's solutions that we're building that will scale, that will never work for that little guy. So we have to make sure we take that into consideration.
What about from your perspective, Jeff? You have a little bit easier way to you don't have that quite that breadth of diversity of companies, obviously.
I think it's a similar approach. We really try to, I guess it's like 2 things, it's what's going to make the most difference and what's going to take the shortest amount of time, and which one should we do? It's what an ROI, based system, but also like there are things that we can make quickly that will improve people's lives a lot, and so that's the advantage of us not being a software company, is that we're able to kind of prioritize in a few different ways. I think that the best way we've been successful is we'll roadmap it just like we were a software company, and we'll roadmap it so that we have our plans for the future, but we always have a little extra time in there for the things that pop up, because things always pop up, right? And so we have our projects we're working on that'll take 6 or 8 months and that we know are big ticket items. like right now we're working on a fire suite that's really going to change things for us. But in the interim, we're still doing those little add-ins or those little pieces of software, or they maybe a little Python code that's going to improve someone's life at the time. And I actually have a bigger dev group than Kevin does, so I guess I don't really have to worry about anything.
I'm a little.
It also. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
Well, I'm a little bit interested in maybe taking a step back and looking at. Jeff, you said it earlier. Not everything do you make or build, and not everything do you buy off the shelf. How do you go through the process of like what was that process like, or what is that process like right now? And it's got to be a concerted effort to go down the route of doing your own in-house development, developing your own tools, developing your own eventual is what you're talking about, platforms. So did you go into that? Did you guys go into that knowing, hey, maybe we're going to go down this route? Or was it like, hey, these tools just aren't fitting our needs? And then now when you identify a problem, how do you balance? Is it off the shelf? Or is it something we're going to build?
So for us, everything started off the shelf, right? And then as we're working in that program, things arise where we need to make we're touching every program with code, like whether we're building a complete solution or we're just building like a connection between this and this, or building something out. And like I kind of want to go back to what the question that John asked earlier. Like Kevin said that like some of the companies are receptive about the tools he's building. And like my thing is that I feel like I don't understand why they wouldn't come to us and be like, why are you developing so much? Like, what is our product not doing? Are those tools really needed? Are we just a software company that's out of touch with our contractors? It's so, but usually like our process for that would be, where at what point does the amount of money I'm paying for a tool surpass what I could build with that amount of money? Is really what it comes down to. And so like,
couldn't agree more.
And what am I getting out of it? How much more am I adding onto it to make it work already? And like, how much of that do I have that I can, bring over to a solution that's going to work for me completely? So yeah, I mean, we start out and it is like, it was a concerted effort to run, like when I first started as the BIM manager, it was a concerted effort to run my BIM department like it was a software company. And now that's grown to where my entire tech department now as CTO is run like a software company. Like it's not run like any other like construction company's BIM department. No one's doing anything but software. We're not coordinating. We're not like, I mean, we have the people that do, the tasks that need to be done, but they're still in that mindset of like, what can be better? What can we help the end user with? How can we improve this? And that's for every software we use. And like, I'm always looking to do something new. And so if we have something that isn't cutting it, like there's no reason we can't start building it while we're using that other product. So that's how we approach it. I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, if the product did everything I needed it to, and then there's the question that I'm sure we'll talk about later, which is like at what point are you changing your workflow to adapt to a product rather than
bingo
using that product to
is the product going to fit you? You're spot on there, Jeff. Is the product going to fit you, or are you going to fit it? Right. And maybe it makes sense sometimes. There are a lot of software platforms out there that they have a process in place. It might be a good process, and it might be that we need to adapt to fit that solution. Other times, no, it doesn't make any sense at all. We have a process. It works for us. We want to continue with that process. We don't want to reinvent everything that we've done just to adapt to a package. So that really that's a hard one to judge in my position. We're very similar, as a team. We don't model, we don't coordinate, we don't do any of that. We're doing training, we're doing implementation of software, weekly Revit trainings, 30 minutes a week, or 30 minutes a week, 30 minutes a day, once a week. There we go. And we have 70-ish people on that call once a week that are Revit modelers that take time out of their day to come learn something. Okay. And during that call, we're introducing new tools that we've developed. At the same time, we're getting feedback from those 70 users, likely more power users in my mind, most of them coming onto that call, not all of them. Some of them are new, but we're getting feedback from them saying, hey, how's the tool working? How do you like it? What can we do better? Do you have an idea for a new tool? If you want a new tool, contact me on the side. Let's talk about that tool and let's see what we could do to make it work, right? So we have a really good engagement with our teams, and it's all elective. There's 330 of them, I would say, out there that we're training and supporting. But when you can get 70 of them coming to a training once a week, I feel like that's pretty good, considering the workload we have.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
And a good class list for MEP.
What's that?
I was gonna say that's a good class list for conference.
Yeah, that's like a conference size class, man.
Yeah,
it is. Yes. And I mean, so then, now we take that and expand it. We got LMS packages that we're using, lots of other things to tie into that, but it really helps drive that development cycle. And we ask for, multiple times, what else do you want? What else can we do to make you better? Okay. You're in the position, you're doing it, boots on the ground every day. How can we make you better? Okay. And that's the ultimate goal of this team here at Comfort Systems, is to make us, more efficient, faster, better at this whole modeling process, prefabrication, productivity, whatever it may be. That all falls under our umbrella. So, I like it because we really control our own destiny when we're writing our code. Okay. We make it work for us.
Someone asked me yesterday, John Marsh, what are you trying to do? And I said, I'm trying to build buildings faster than everyone else. And that's like I don't have a customer. I'm just trying to build buildings faster than everyone else. That's my customer is me, and I want to win. And that's something that also doesn't exist in, and it can't. It's not like, oh, that shitty software company. Like, it's that their goal is also to do that, but it's also their bottom line. And mine is purely so that E.M.Duggan can build buildings faster than everyone else.
We don't get paid. We don't have a job if we can't build the building,
right,
and turn it on, right? That's the end goal. And so, yes, we have all of these things we do up front, but yeah, the ultimate goal is to do it faster, better, more efficient than the other guy. Okay. And, especially, depending on your contracts and where you're at. And we have, again, such a diverse piece. We have some companies that are plan spec. We have some companies that are, I'd say 98% design build. So we really have a diverse, eclectic group of operating companies, right? Some of them, full, I'd say modular, doing that work all day, every day. That's all they do. And some that are still learning how to do their first sets of prefab, right? So it's such a diverse ecosystem here at Comfort, which makes it challenging. To me, it's fun, but yes, can be very challenging.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder for you guys to find anything out of the box as well. And I'm kind of interested, Jeff, in you said something that so folks listening know I'm the one who's usually on the other side, really arguing against companies getting involved in this because it's not your specialty, it's not what you do, it's not core to your business. I think the interesting part of what you two do is that the lines are well blurred at the moment, especially given the immaturity of the software provided to the industry. And it's really funny because we have a dichotomy, right? We have some things that are very old, and so they're killing us. And all the new stuff is really not mature enough. So we have some like elderly things that are killing us and some new things that are killing us. But Jeff,
Sounds like a construction workforce.
Maybe
Yep.
we do have a tendency to view that. But you said something that's critical when I'm sitting down and doing the analysis with a company, right? Because I ask you what you do and how you do it. And you said you run your BIM department like a software company. That's a conscious decision by E.M.Duggan to invest in that. And, you know, we've had a lot of discussions but I have never dug into like the depth at which you go to that side of things. But tell me how you even like went about that. And what does that mean to have a software mindset versus, you know, a lot of folks out there just have a BIM mindset, and you should, right? Like there's no judgment on either side.
Oh yeah, and I'm not saying that like we don't do the BIM thing too. It's just so like we try to steer away from, and it's not for like any personal like reason, or I'm not saying that like people in construction shouldn't be writing code or like, but like there is a time where you get people that are built for the jobs that you're doing. And so like what we did is we have our BIM people that are they're doing BIM, but like the way that they're doing it is with the end user in mind. Like I always say to my team, like our customer is we're in a weird place where I always kind of equate us to safety because we're trying to get people to do what's best for them, but they don't want to do it most of the time. And you know, and like, and so the way that we build that out is so we have developer titles. We have a senior developer. We have junior developers. We have comp-sci. They're all comp-sci majors. They're all people that got into the industry because they wanted to build software. We run our BIM department with the end user in mind, where we're building solutions for them. We're training them. Kind of like what Kevin said, like we're having those training sessions, we're doing implementations, we run all of our own implementations. Like we'll go through the software implementation, but then we'll cater it to what our company actually needs, you know, and it's not catered to what the product does. Because a lot of the time we get into those, you know, meetings with the product managers or the people that are implementing the software at your company for a software company, and they're trying to tell you how the software best works, not how you best work in the software. And so,
yes.
So like I'm trying not to mention the last one, Jeff, the last conversation we had, but like we talked about, you know, like we do have code review. We have like a really good hold on our versioning. We have roadmaps where we're laying out what our plan is for the future, both in like our solutions as well as like anything else that we're doing. We're doing implementations, we're doing the onboarding of new people, which everyone does, but it's with an eye on like how can we make these things work better in the software. It's not like we're almost all, and I guess this isn't fair to say, but like we try to be almost completely concerned with how people are using technology, not how like to install a pipe, not how to coordinate a building, not how, like we're all about the end user experience more than we are about like the MEP trade, you know. And that's not to say like myself, Jesse, who I work with, and like pretty much anyone that's also touching that realm of like being a little bit in between is first and foremost trained in MEP. But then we hire specialists who are doing those things that need to be done. I talked last time that I saw you guys, I think I might have talked about it on the podcast last time, that like process managers, like things like that like you don't see at your typical construction company, but it's like the software is touching every single thing we do. It's not like we're using it like sparingly as a tool, and our BIM department just does BIM. Like I'm of the mindset that you got to be a multi-pronged approach, and your BIM department can do BIM, but then you need another department to do solutions. You need another department to do field tech. You need another department to do project management. You know, you're not, and those are all under that same umbrella, but we're breaking it apart like it would be a software company. Like, and we have our product specialists, and we have our like people that are going out and finding out what's needed next. And like, I'm the marketing guy at this point in my career. Like I'm the one messaging, and you know, like that's where it's at. And like, I guess the product manager. But yeah, no, it's a definite conscious effort. And like I was just talking with my team that I think we're going to start going more to like the events we go to. I think we're going to start doing more of the industry, the software industry events and the robotics industry events, and the more so than like the MEP events. And those are great, but like that's not our wheelhouse right now, if that makes sense. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's you've given it that thought that there's not a ton. I mean, I didn't hear you say it in there, but I'm sure you've built in time for tech debt, right? Like code gets stale. People, this is something for those that maybe have not thought it all the way through. Like Kevin, you've got to be thinking about, you know, those tools that you're building as they're based on probably another couple of sets of tools that are outside of your control. There's tech debt, there's change management. This is not something, you know, you just willy-nilly go into.
Yes. Yeah. So, as with most organizations, here's a prime example of that, Jeff. Security is, you know, top priority, right? When we deal with, you know, software and computers and hacking and all of these things. Okay. So one of the things that we try to do here is to eliminate the need for admin password credentials, because every user in our environment, they don't have admin passwords, right? So if there's anything that needs to be installed, they've got to go to the help desk and they've got to get information, you know, get security. So we develop tools that we can push files and information to the machine and not need to go through the security process, but we've got the security built in on our side, right? It's all within our network. It's all within us. So we're pushing files and updates and things to machines. They're just clicking an executable on their desktop. Okay. Makes it absolutely phenomenal to update and do things, right? Well, if we didn't think about that, can you imagine pushing an update out to 300, 350 users, and every one of them has to call the help desk and get an admin password? Okay. It's just not practical, right? So, you know, not only are we developing tools to work within the Revit environment, or, you know, integrate data, you know, all the things, you know, track production tracking in the field, you know, those are the kind of things that fall under our umbrella. But we're also working with our IT, working internally, you know, with the organization to say, how can we best facilitate still being safe and secure with our equipment, but not taking away from the user's productivity time just because they need to get an update on their machine. Okay. So when I was first hiring here, they wanted me to work for IT. And I said, no, I'm not IT. I'm construction. Okay. I live and breathe construction. Am I going to be working with IT, and are we going to be somewhat joined at the hip sometimes for certain projects? Sure we are. But my role and responsibility here is to help production, help productivity, and you know, make us better on the construction side of the business. I'm not here to help fix a printer because it's not printing. Okay. I'm here to go work on a plasma table when the plasma table goes down. It's all hands on deck, right? We got 15. No, I think it was 15. It's about 18 companies and about 40 or 45 different tables across the network. Okay. That's laser tables, plasma tables, water jets, on and on, right? Anytime one of those tables goes down, it's all hands on deck. Stop what you're doing. Wherever you're at, if you're in the airport, you're traveling, whatever it is, we're going to stop and we're going to fix that table and make sure it's back up and running. Because if that table's not building ductwork, we're not making money, right? So it's a different mindset when you come, to the realization that although, yes, we need to build tools and functionality, we got to be secure about that. But we also have to develop those tools that could get deployed and implemented in a way that is efficient for our users. Okay. When we first started, it was manually copying DLLs around, right? And I think everybody went through that phase. Okay. Been there, done that. Okay. And then you develop and it's like, okay, the pain's big enough. Now it's time to develop another tool to make the job easier. And that really drives the process, right? When the pain gets big enough for not just us, but our users in the modeling process, in the spooling process, in the packaging process, whatever it is, when the pain gets great enough that they're coming to us saying, help, we're listening. Okay. So that's really what helps drive a lot of our processes throughout ComfortCure.
I had a brief question on process because you guys, I actually often am the same as Jeff. Up until very recently, I had been telling people, hey, don't develop your own software because you're not going to be able to keep up with all the updates. And, you're not a software company. And, Jeff, you're the example. And even Kevin, both of you have a little mini software company. So there's an extent at which that's not true for you. One of the things I noticed over the last year that's been really interesting, and you talked about fitting yourself to the software, having the software fit to you, is I've been working with some service softwares, some software for service departments, and I've been working with the service contractors to build process. And where the best process that we found is looking at all of the software pieces, walking through the steps that they built into their software to build sort of an outline of what a good process is. In fact, half of the time, the process that I come to the software with, when I look at the software, it's very much like Jeff said, it's like the safety guy. It's like, oh crap, we should be doing it that way, because they've had to spend the time really looking at deeply the entire ecosystem that is industry. How many times, we've been picking on some big software providers a little bit. How many times has your process been very much changed by what you see in the industry, and how conscious are you of that as you see new tools come out from Autodesk or from some of these bigger suppliers that, hey, is this a part of my process? Should this be a part of my process? Like, what's your thoughts on that? I'll hand it to Jeff first.
Do Autodesk products ever fit your process?
I'll be the first to say no.
Am I missing something?
First to say.
Am I missing something? Yeah. I mean, so I think it's kind of like you get the idea from the side. Like, we don't move to being entirely model based without the software existing, right? Like, no one went out there before and was like, oh, we're entirely model based, and they're like, oh, what are you using? And I invented it yesterday, and now we're entirely model based. Like, you got to get the ideas from somewhere, and that's like what I feel like it's like catch up, and then at some point you surpass it and you start doing what maybe the software companies aren't thinking about yet or haven't solved yet, or like I've talked about before, like where, me and Kevin and a lot of the people we talk with have the ability to do things that like people in smaller shops and stuff like that, like you're not hiring an entire dev team. You're not like, but at the same time, like those software companies are marketing themselves to all of us. Like, and so at some point you surpass that point and you start doing your own process and your own, I keep saying software, but it's really like bigger than that, right? Like you're coming up with your own ways of doing things and facilitating those through creating your own software. And at some point, like that's not going to exist in the wild because you're trying to get further ahead. And that goes back, I guess, to the process over software, is the software dictating your process. And I guess it's both. And we all see like industry trends and software trends and this coming out. Like if we had this conversation in 2017, I would have told you that like I can't do that with fab parts because fab parts don't work in Revit, and I want to do Revit and all of like, and then 2018 and a half comes and like it's like, oh, that changes maybe I can do this stuff, maybe I have the ability to do this, and then your process adapts to that. But I also think like we were behind everyone else as usual, but like as an industry, but like we weren't behind, but we were catching up 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago to where other industries were as far as like technology solutions went, right? And that's why like I always say it was the Wild West, because it like 8 years ago we were all just like, can you believe this new thing? Can you believe that new thing? Can you believe this new thing? And now it's settled out to where like everyone has those things in place. And now it's the next step, which is like you've surpassed those things and you're trying to build out your own, and you're trying to even go further than the software companies. Like I was competing with other mechanicals, and then I was competing with other MEP, and now I'm trying to compete with software companies, where I don't have the bandwidth to do that, but I do for E.M.Duggan, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Same here. I mean, if we look at the marketplace and you look at the construction industry and the amount of startups that are moving into this space, right? If you looked at it 10 years ago, it wasn't very many. You look at it now, I think some reports I've seen, there's like 7,000 or 8,000 different startups within the construction space. And to your point, Jeff, we're not going to compete with all of those guys. There'll be 2, 3, 5% of those guys that'll actually make it to a full-blown software package at some point, right? They're just a thought at this point in time. So we're keeping our pulse on those while continuing to develop and do what we do in-house, because what I tell people a lot is, look, I'm solving boots on the ground problems today. Okay. This is a problem today. Yes, I still have to look at what's going to happen 3, 5, 10 years down the road, but I get an ROI on the code that we write and the button that we create this week. Okay. That's instrumental in making us better and more efficient as an organization. And I think I would say the same thing for you, Jeff, right? Like, you're keeping the pulse, the eye on what's happening, but you're really solving internal problems that exist, and it's a quick win for you in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was saying, with the added point that like now that we've been doing it for a while, we're even. And so now I feel like some of the ideas that we're trying to put into motion are the same ideas that software companies are trying to put into motion that you won't see for a while. The added benefit of that is that I don't have the restrictions that software companies have, and I have a captive audience. Like it took a while, but everyone at E.M.Duggan now understands what a beta is, and I can give a beta to all of my customers at once and get feedback all at once and improve that over and over and over. Where if you're going to market with something, you better make sure it works. And I guess I shouldn't say that because that's not everyone.
Some of it doesn't work anyway. They go to market. They go to market anyway, Jeff. It doesn't matter.
Sometimes it's just get it the hell out of there and like, let's see if people like it, if we can trick them. But you know, it's like, it's a little bit of both, but you're completely right in that, like, I can release something immediately that will have an immediate impact on tomorrow's day. And that's
right.
You know, the best. That's what you're
It's
looking
phenomenal.
for.
It's
Yep.
absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion.
I have a question, and this one actually goes to Jeff Sample first. But Jeff, when you described yourself as, you know, like, oh, everybody's got that now. I'm wondering, you know, because I immediately thought I've been to a couple conferences that are not tech conferences and talked to some contractors there. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, don't take this the wrong way, you may be in a small bit of a bubble. Sample, do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get the power of being everywhere. And I will tell you, y'all live in a very special environment, both of you. And look, that's how I
feel privileged to be there too, by the way.
That's how industries are. I mean, that's how industries are. But before I completely answer that question, we had Travis, I want you to ask yours because it's a really good one.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sending messages here because I have to bail here soon. But so going on the home brewing analogy here, you've been brewing your own beer for a long time. You really got it down the way you like. And all of a sudden you find this new microbrew or even this new beer that's really good and it's satisfying your needs. How do you back down from that homebrew and how do you let it go? And has that happened? Have you kind of found a new tool that's in the marketplace that you think is awesome and you got to go back out and say, yeah, that thing that we built that you all love, we're going to pull the plug because this new thing's going to do it for us. I'll leave that to either of you.
I'll start first. We haven't had that yet. I mean, it just hasn't happened. Okay.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's great, right? I mean, it's a great place to be. And I don't know, maybe we're lucky. I tell people a lot of times, we have a little crystal ball that we use and we try to predict what's going to happen. And we write code sometimes based on what we think is going to happen in this industry. Sometimes we hit it and sometimes we don't. Okay. Prime example, we had a company come to us, I don't know, it's been about a month ago and said, hey, it would be great if we had this. And we're like, well, we've had that for a year. What do you mean it'd be great if we had it? You have it now. All we got to do is train you on how to use it. Okay. So that's a tremendous feeling when you've written the code and a user, you know, it is coming to you saying, hey, I got a great idea. Yeah, you're right. That's a great idea. We already got it implemented. Like all you got to do is be shown how to use it. So I feel fortunate in that respect.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead, Jeff. I think they might not be the answer you want, but we use the tool. Like if we find something that's better than like what we're doing right now, then we use the tool. And there's not a ton of examples of that because it's so custom built. Like a lot of the times you're not going to find something that's going to check all those boxes. But you guys know I'm a microdesk guy. Like I will tell everyone how great their database management is and how good BIMRX is. And like, it's the only other ribbon we use. And like, I'm all for if someone comes up with an idea that's better than mine, that I'm going to use it. And that's the beauty of my position in the world is that I get the best of both worlds. I don't have to choose. Like, I don't have to say like, and the other thing about that is that you, like me as a private company and as working for E.M.Duggan, and those are my only clients, like I can buy a software and see what I like and see what I don't, and then make the things I like and incorporate them into, and not exactly like, but I can I can take some of things from here and some of the things from here and move them into where it makes, one unified solution that I really like. But yeah, I mean, I just use it, and it's like, I guess that's where it transfers to cost and performance. What's the cost and what extra performance am I getting over? And that's what I do with any other software. Like, I treat the stuff we're building like anything else. Like, I evaluate it the same way, and I don't have a physical, like, emotional attachment to it. I just, if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's like, I come from an art background, and I had a teacher say, like, it's not about what's good and bad, it's about what works and what doesn't work. And that's like how I try to approach all of this, is like, does it work? Is it doing the most it can for us? If it's not, what can we do to improve that? If we can improve it and do our own thing, great. If we need to add on to it, great. I haven't met the software yet that, like, we didn't have to add on to, but if I did, I'd be all about it. Like, I hope that all of the softwares that I use go to a place where I am, have nothing to say about them, believe it or not. Believe it or not.
Highly unlikely.
I was just going to say, like, there are some people out there right now that are like, oh, will you? Oh, will you stop complaining?
Well,
what do I have to do?
I liked Travis's question because it's not if, it's when, right? Like, this will happen to both of you.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I agree. It's going to happen. Yes.
Yeah, we want it to.
It's definitely.
Oh, yeah. And that's the whole goal, because if these third-party developers aren't pushing the envelope and aren't trying to be better than us, then what are they doing? What are they marketing? What are they selling? Okay, they have to find a way to have that edge somehow. So it would be great. I mean, it would be phenomenal if we could go work on other things and not have to write code. But I don't see it happening anytime soon.
No, I honestly think you'll always have to write some sort of code. I mean, to stitch together businesses as diverse as yours are. I mean, Jeff, you've grown from mechanical to a MEP. Kevin, yours is ridiculous. I'm not even gonna try. You're always going to be writing. It's what's worth writing, what needs to be written versus what can be used, and but not a lot of companies really have the wherewithal or the process to go through that. And Jeff, you said something again I'm always looking for when I go somewhere, and that is, I'm not emotionally tied to what I've built. Far too many groups that get involved in this process get emotionally tied to their baby, and it's like, yeah, well, your baby's ugly, I hate to tell you. And by the way, there's a better one out there that you can get far more out of for less investment, and you can make the parts that you need to fit. So it's again just one of those things where not everybody has that intestinal fortitude to look at their own stuff and say, invariably, I'll put it up against anything, and if anything is better, I'll find a way to stitch that in. But you're never going to stop writing code, right? I don't know that I wouldn't hope that you do.
Well, none of you would have ever said that I would have moved away from Revit families. Like, if we had talked like 5 years ago, everyone was like, "You still using Revit families?" I'm like, "You're not." Like, what are you like? Okay, like, keep doing your thing. And then, it's like, oh, well, I guess we've surpassed like parametric families. And that even goes with the, like, your coding thing. You're never going to have to not build families. Like, you're always going to be building Revit families, but your database is going to be all ITM, and most of the stuff you're using is ITM because they got to that point where that provided more for you than what you were doing before. Your own built solution doesn't have as much in it as, and that's where, like, it all lands, I think. And the other thing is like, as great as what we're doing is, we don't have the resources that an Autodesk or a Procore or a whatever has to, like, put into those things.
ERP systems, right? We would never tackle something like that.
That's the
right?
one. That's the one. Like we've never we've made things that will work with our ERP system,
Yeah.
but I'm not making an ERP system. I'm not making a SQL database. I'm not making it's just not what we do.
So,
I had a question just to.
It comes back to API access, right? What do those products have that we can interface with? And as long as they've got a good API, you know what? Let's roll with it. Okay, it's good. Let's do the integration or whatever it is that we need. We can talk to it programmatically and solve a lot of problems that way.
Yeah.
Well, I have one question just to piggyback on that before, because we have to wrap up soon. But how much of that is cost? Because when you're deciding when to walk away from your own products, Kevin, you have so many users that a $10 a month program in your company pays.
Yes.
There's a huge difference. And Jeff, you had said earlier, and you said several times that you have a very black and white equation that goes on in your head of development costs versus purchase costs every time. How many, Travis asked a great solution or a great question about homebrews. And, I said at the very beginning, I knew there were better homebrews than I could produce. I just couldn't afford them. How much of your homebrewing is a financial necessity, would you guess? And how much is really just things that need to be built?
That line is moving towards financial necessity over things that need to be built. What did we use? I was thinking about this the other day. What we used to say, 1% should go towards your software costs. Is anyone that was I think 7 or 8 years ago, if you sat in the thing at the innovation conference or whatever, they would tell you 1.5% of it. Is anyone able to do that with software costs now? Is that even close to what you're able to do? And so that is part of it. It's what do I need and what can I build? Right? What do I need to buy for software and what can I build for software? What solution is going to give me the most and what can I build out for in a reasonable amount of time for a reasonable amount of money? But if you really, I don't want to insult anyone that, any of these software companies too much, but if I'm paying $1 million over 3 to 5 years for something, think about what I could build.
How many developers could you hire? How much outside source? Even if you had to outsource a bunch of it, how much work could you get done and have it working exactly the way you want it, not 50 or 60% of the way you want it?
Yep.
And that's how we look at it here. It wasn't that way in the beginning. I think, there was comments made, we're a construction company, not a software company. Okay. It's been said many times. And, sometimes we still hear it today, but the realization has happened also that in order for us to be a successful builder of buildings, we have to be technical and we have to use technology and we have to embrace what's out here. And if it doesn't fit your needs, what else do? You go make it fit your need. Okay. And that's kind of where we're at here is making the tools fit what we have as far as, our operating companies. And it's quite difficult, but quite satisfying at the same time when you can walk in and I may not visit this operating company for 6 months. And I remember training them 6 months ago on, let's just call it a spooling tool, right? And I walk in and the guy that I trained on spooling 6 months ago, he's bragging about, the quantity of spools he's able to get out the door and feed his fab shop and keep the fab shop, covered up with spool sheets. They can't build them. He's, that's quite enjoyable and gratifying when something like that occurs, right? And knowing that that was a homebrew. Okay, that was a tool that we built internally, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Right? That's phenomenal. That is very gratifying.
And that's what you get when you're able to service your own company and really focus on them, right? I mean, that's the difference. It's just not as much of a walk in the park as it might seem too. So that's what I'm glad to hear you guys talk about. It take a lot of thought, and a lot of,
yes,
I would call it rigor. You have to have rigor in what you're doing, and both of you have, both of you have expressed the rigor in which it takes to make those decisions and do those things. So it's important. So with that, I got to wrap us up, guys. This has been a fun episode. Thanks again for sitting down a second time to talk to us.
Yes.
Yeah, can everyone drink next time? Can everyone drink next time? This podcast
Everybody needs to drink next time.
This podcast has lost its edge.
Hey, we're all losing our edge, these things happen.
Not me. I'm just getting
maybe it's only because I showed up. I ruined the party whenever I walked in the door.
Oh no.
Kevin.
Nah, that we leave that to Elwell. He knows how to crash a party from anywhere. No, actually, it's been awesome, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for the invite. Enjoyed it. Great conversation. I'm actually open to do it again if you guys wanted to. Let's just continue it some more.
Yeah, let's sit down and talk. Hopefully see you guys at, Jeff, if you guys are, switching up where you're headed, but hopefully MEP Innovations always keeps you on that track.
Innovation. I'll see you at Innovation.
It wouldn't be this
of AI.
It wouldn't be the same without you heckling people from the back and calling them to task.
What about this?
Kevin? We have a scheme to get you into innovation here soon.
Okay. I think I heard about this. I got an email about this the other day. So I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see what that's gonna transpire into.
I have a scheme.
Really? Always scheming over some sort of brown liquor or some sort of home brew. With that, guys, thank you. This has been episode 75 and a third. If you want to know what that means, you're just going to have to ask one of us. The joy of home brewing.
Later, everyone.